All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had a great weekend. I'm very excited for today because this is going to be a good old-fashioned episode of Hoops Tonight. We are just going to react to a jam-packed weekend full of NBA preseason games. We're going to hit 4 different games today. The Lakers versus the Suns, the New York Knicks versus the Charlotte Hornets, as well as the Warriors versus the Clippers, and then lastly, we're going to be hitting briefly the Bucks and the Detroit Pistons. So 4 game breakdowns, and then we'll get out of here for the day. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight, don't forget it's super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can keep hitting them throughout the remainder of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. So Lakers Suns, 2 teams trying to generate more three-point shots under new coaching staffs, and they both did. Lakers took 40 in this game, up from their average considerably last year, and the Suns took 39. I thought the Lakers, we're going to start on the Lakers, I thought they looked mostly sharp on both ends of the floor, especially in the half court. They looked organized. They ran a lot of action on the majority of their trips down the floor. They've added a lot of this like guard to guard dribble handoff stuff at the beginning of possessions. Most coaches call it a weave. We ran a very similar offense to that when I was playing at my first junior college, similar to what the Lakers did too, where sometimes it was vacant and sometimes you'd have a big kind of operated around the top of the key. It looks a little funky with the Lakers just because typically that is designed to help guys get downhill. The idea there is like, let's say there's 2 guards that are kind of intersecting. If they're doing a dribble pitch to each other, if they don't switch, then there's just like some traffic, like some bodies that the primary defender has to work his way through as they're weaving past each other. And if they do switch, you have the opportunity for one defender to be kind of his momentum going one way as the offensive players going the opposite way, and you might get to turn the corner. The thing is the Lakers don't really have athletic guards. So that's the one reason I've never been a huge fan of that style of offense. Sean Miller used to run a dribble weave with the University of Arizona men's basketball team here in Tucson. And obviously being from Tucson, it's like the professional sports team here is like Arizona basketball, right? And so when Sean Miller was there, like I kind of hated when they ran that dribble weave offense. It just seems like any like focused defense is going to be able to stay out in front of that. But we're seeing a little bit of that. I don't want to get too worked up about it because it's early and who knows what additional stuff JJ Redick's going to add in time to make that function. And honestly, too, one of the other things too is I think anytime you implement new stuff, it just takes time for guys to figure out how to use it to the best of their ability, right? So, but in general, they ran a lot of action. They looked very organized. They got great shots the majority of the time that they ran action. They generated more threes. A couple of specific ways that they generated more threes. One, AD picking and popping or AD spacing to the three-point line. So a lot of those AD catches that were turning into mid-range jump shots, just looking for stuff more out by the three-point line. There was a classic LeBron AD ball screen where AD, instead of kind of popping to the elbow, popped out above the break and he knocked it down. And that's the thing. I think he took 3 threes, if I remember correctly, or maybe just 2. But like, he made one of them. And so like, even if you miss the other 2 threes, I mean, that's 3 points on 3 shots. The math is working to your advantage there by just turning some of those 80 pops into threes. He doesn't need to shoot 38% on from 3. If he shoots 33% out there, it is the equivalent as if he made 50% of his pick and pop jump shots out around the elbows, right? And so again, it's a different situation when you get into late game stuff and field goal percentage matters more on a single possession. But over the course of the regular season, you can squeeze a little bit more value out of your offense by turning some shots that typically turned out to be 2s, turning them into 3s. Similarly in ball screens, the Laker ball handlers are looking to take more 3s out of ball screens instead of mid-range 2s. Once again, just the exact same kind of mathematical argument I was just making, just finding ways to squeeze a little bit more efficiency out of their offense. They still maintained the identity of their offense. They were attacking the paint relentlessly. They had 60 points in the paint. They shot 61% on 2s. LeBron and AD were bullying their way down there a bunch. They got to the foul line plenty. I thought LeBron and AD both looked great. How about 36 points, 13 rebounds, and 7 assists on 15 for 22 shooting and 3 for 6 from 3? Not bad. combined from LeBron and AD in one half of play. They look in shape. They look locked in. They looked ready to go. Dalton Knecht looked comfortable in both games, getting to his spots. He's big and strong, and it's always the first thing you're looking for when you watch a college player coming into the NBA level. Like, how do they look physically alongside other pros? And there was a specific play that I really liked that they ran twice against the Wolves. And it was like a horn set, and it involved like kind of like a decoy ball screen where Rui like faked like he was going to go set a ball screen. I think it was for Austin or D'Lo. I can't remember who it was that was on the right side. But then instead of setting that ball screen, he would just veer off and set a quick like off ball screen for Dalton Knecht to come downhill towards the foul line area. And the first time they ran it, he got downhill and he knocked down a little 15-foot jump shot off the dribble. The second time they ran it, they ended up switching it, and all of a sudden Naz Reid was on Dalton Knecht. And Dalton Knecht just ended up making a hard dribble drive move to the right, and Naz was kind of trapped behind him. And Dalton did a good job of using his size to kind of shield Naz off so he can finish with that right hand at the rim. Like, that's the thing, like the ability to be big enough to seal bigger and more athletic players off at the rim so you can find angles to finish. That's impressive. There was some stuff with the two-man game with AD, especially against the Suns. Well, I say especially, it was the only time AD played. Against the Suns in particular, he had a little two-man game going with Anthony Davis off the right side where he looked comfortable. One time he hit AD popping back out for like a little 20-footer. And then the second time he got into that little elbow area and rose up and confidently knocked down a pull-up jump shot. The catch-and-shoot jump shot is not going down for Dalton Knecht yet. He hit a pretty nice movement one on the left wing coming off of like a crazy little off-ball action to the left corner against the Wolves that he knocked down. But I think he's 2 for 10 on catch-and-shoot jump shots so far. But he is shooting well off the dribble, and he looks comfortable in that specific setting when he's feeling the ball. I'm impressed so far with Dalton Knecht's first few opportunities to play in the preseason. The Laker offense looked more or less exactly how I expected to look. Fucking good. It's a good offense, just like it was good to end last year. They scored 69 points in the first half, despite not shooting the three ball well. There were a lot of like payoffs, like big plays where they ran action and got a wide open corner three for Austin Reeves, or a wide open corner three for D'Angelo Russell, or wide open three, and they just weren't going down. And they still got 69 points, despite not quite shooting up to the level that I thought they were capable of. So I thought it was a really impressive first appearance for the Laker offense over the weekend, and I expect it to get better as JJ Redick continues to implement his stuff and kind of round out some of the details. On the defensive end, it was a mixed bag. The transition defense in particular was exceptionally bad. They gave up 33 transition points to Phoenix on just 26 possessions. That's 1.27 points per possession. Now, the Suns are in general a very efficient transition offense, although they don't run as much as I'd like them to, but I was encouraged by how much they ran. We'll talk about the Suns here in a minute. But like on tape, it wasn't just the Suns making magical basketball happen in transition. The Lakers just weren't doing their jobs. Like, I talk a lot about how the first two things you have to do in transition defense is stop the ball and then stop the rim. If you do those two things, like let's say you're in a situation where you have 3 bodies underneath the baskets, your floor balance is a little off, and but you have 2 guys that are above the break. Those 2 guys, as long as they sprint back and one of them stops the ball and one of them puts themselves between bodies and the rim, then at the very least, you're probably going to force them into a jump shot. And it's a make and miss league, right? Like the best jump shooters in the world are, if they get to a mid-range shot, might hit 55, 60% on the 3-point line. A good wide open look, they might hit 50%, but you buy yourself a chance for a miss there, right? But there were a lot of possessions against Phoenix where they were giving up dunks and layups because guys were back, but they just weren't matched up or they weren't communicating. They looked really, really sloppy in transition. There were some possessions with bad floor balance. There was a possession in particular where all 4 players were below the break. 4 of the players were below the break and 1 player was above the break, like as the shot was going up. Like those are those little details I was talking about in the season preview where it's like you always got to like kind of have your spacing set up properly, not just to account for keeping the defense spread out so you can create space for your stars, but also in terms of floor balance so that you have guys that are capable of getting back in transition defense. Not a good first impression of the Lakers starting lineup in terms of their transition defense. And it's just disappointing because it's something they've talked a lot about in camp, about wanting to be better at, and they just certainly don't look better yet. But again, there's a lot of sloppy all over the place in preseason. We're going to talk about the Suns. They looked really sloppy last night too. So like there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you can expect to get better over time as these teams continue to get back in the flow of NBA basketball. The half court defense for the Lakers, I was really impressed by. They held the Suns to 0.91 points per half court possession, which is very good. I thought they did a really good job of contesting jump shots without fouling. There were a couple ones in there. There was Jackson Hayes in particular was just committing foul after foul after foul in ball screens. And D'Lo, I think, got Devin Booker on a 3-point shot on the right wing in transition. But for the most part, they walled up. They watched their feet. They did a good job contesting, chasing guys off the line, too, and forcing them into contested twos. Phoenix took 16 2-point jump shots outside of the paint and made just 2 of them. And a lot of them were contested. There was a lot of like Phoenix players taking tough, contested mid-range jump shots and falling down and looking at the refs when like the Lakers were just doing their job, like contesting shots. I thought that was impressive. LeBron and AD were really smart in their help on the back line. I'm going to show you guys a clip of that. We're going to do Timpf's tape. That's going to be an everyday thing from now on. There's going to be I have 9 clips from all the games that I'm going to be showing at the tail end of the show today. And I'm going to show you guys some examples of LeBron and AD. One example of LeBron and AD just being really smart in their help. There were some issues for the Laker defense. Like Devin Booker was being guarded by D'Lo a lot early in the game. And Booker obviously was just very comfortable getting to where he wanted to get. Jackson Hayes, like I mentioned earlier, as soon as he checked in, he just immediately committed a couple fouls and ball screens. I think he committed 3 fouls in the first half in ball screens. And it's just the same thing. It's like every time the ball handler comes downhill at him, he just hacks. He's just a hack. And so that's something he's going to have to figure out if he's going to become a more reliable backup center in this league. But again, overall, I thought they looked sharp. I thought they looked committed. They don't need to be great on defense to stay afloat in the regular season. They just need to be average, like 15th in defensive rating. If they can kind of hang around there, I think they're going to win a lot of regular season games. Last note on the Lakers, as far as Bronny goes, yeah, he's not very good right now. He needs a lot of reps. It's probably going to be pretty bad for a few years, right? But we all knew that was going to be the case. Bronny was a guy that coming out of high school was viewed as a legitimate NBA prospect, and he lost an entire year basically of real repetition and rhythm at USC because of his health condition. And so it's going to take some time. He was already a very raw prospect to begin with. There's going to be some people out there that are going to capitalize on every ugly low light of Bronny's early career here. And you're going to do yourself a favor by just acknowledging that's what it is. Bronny's going to struggle because he's not ready yet. And so there's going to be a lot of mistakes. As far as the Lakers go, I don't think Bronny has any chance of cracking the actual rotation when they get into regular season games. They might, as a novelty, throw him in a situation when the game's out of reach to get a moment with LeBron, but he's not going to be playing for a little while. So it's not a big deal. How flawed he is at this point just doesn't matter. The big thing is he's just sloppy and he makes a lot of mistakes. He kind of traveled on a little hop step through the lane. There was an illegal screen that he got called for on Devin Booker where he literally hit him like a football sled and moved him 4 feet. That's going to be an illegal screen every time. He had a defensive rebound once and started dribbling up the floor, just didn't see what was happening around him and got picked from behind. He just looks sloppy and a little bit out of sorts. And that's going to take time. He's going from playing at the high school level to barely playing at USC to now he's being thrown in against the best players in the world. So it's just get ready for it to be a little sloppy and acknowledge it for what it is. On the Suns front, they looked a little clunky. AD was sagging off of Mason Plumlee and clogging up the paint. The Lakers were doing a lot of switching, especially 1 through 4, and they were just doing a good job of contesting their pull-up jump shots, like I talked about earlier. KD and Devin Booker want to combine 7 for 22 from the field. As a team, as I mentioned earlier, they were just 2 for 16 on 2-point shots outside of the paint. Tyus Jones, he brought the ball up the floor a good amount of the time, but I don't think they really benefited much from it. First of all, the Lakers are not much of a ball pressure team. They're not a team that's picking up full court and making things difficult. So you're not really getting an upside from having him, Tyus Jones, navigate ball pressure in this particular matchup. They weren't running as much off-ball action with Tyus kind of as the passing hub as I thought they would. He kind of just brought it up the floor and then made a swing pass, and they just played like the Suns from last year in a lot of ways. in terms of the way they initiated offense. Where I did see the difference immediately was just generating more threes. Went 16 for 39 from three. I think that's 41%. Couple of specific ways that they were generating more threes, more kickouts, especially on catches from the elbow. There was a two-man game between KD and Devin Booker where Booker slipped. This is also in the Timpf's tape that you guys will see, where Devin Booker slipped to the foul line and he caught and he looked at the rim and he had a shot. But instead of taking the shot, Dalton Connect had rotated over as the low man and Bradley Beal was wide open in the corner. And so instead of taking a shot that Devin Booker can hit at a high percentage, which is that mid-range shot, makes a kick out to Bradley Beal, who shot over 40% from three last year. That's 1.2 points per shot. That means Devin Booker would have to shoot 60% on his mid-range jump shot to be worth more than a Bradley Beal catch and shoot three from that corner there. And Bradley Beal knocked it down. That's just like a little detail too, like just more catches at the elbow that instead of turning into ISOs are turning into quick decisions and kickouts. The Suns had 33 assists on 43 made field goals last night. That's awesome. That's a 77% assist rate. That's like off the charts good. That's a really good marker to watch for the Suns this year in general. This is something I talked about in their season preview. Last year, they had a 66% assist rate in wins and a 60% assist rate in losses. That is a super wide disparity compared to some of the other teams in the league. And so, like, that's something we want to watch with the Suns this year. Like, for them, a good marker is like if they get an assist on 2/3 of their shots or more, 2/3 of their made field goals or more, that's a strong indicator that they're getting into their drive and kick and they're generating quality shots and they're not settling for too much on an island basketball. They got a lot of good looks in transition. That was the major offensive upside that I saw from last night. The Suns weren't much of a transition scoring team last year. To give you just a very basic stat, they were very efficient because they're super skilled. But when they just didn't do it as often as I'd like to have seen them do. They ran on 22% of their possessions last night against the Lakers. That number was about 18% last year. And so again, just if you think of it on a very basic level, like the Lakers had a good half-court offense game, getting about 1 point per possession. Like in that 1.00 to 1.05, in the half court, you expect your offensive rating to be lower because it's harder basketball. You're playing against a set defense, right? So every opportunity you have to get out and transition and get something easy before the defense is set, those are your opportunities to influx a bunch of efficiency into your offense. And so, again, I thought that was something that was a kind of an upside to the offense last night. It was the one thing that kept the starters close. And because again, you're never really looking at the scoreboard in games like this because like after the half, they just play all the end of the bench guys, right? And but like the Kevin Durant, Devin Booker units were -8. And it could have been much worse without their transition scoring. And so that goes to show you just like how you can one area of the game, one margin. Remember I talked about JJ Redick and like trying to expand margins for their team to help them win games in the long run. And JJ was talking about it through offensive rebounding. Here's an example of it through scoring in transition. The Suns dominated the transition battle last night, kept a game close that otherwise could have gotten ugly for them. Again, a little sloppy for their first outing, but I thought the Lakers looked sloppy in their first game against Minnesota too. Like this is their second game, so the Lakers are further along in this process. So it's nothing to overreact to. But I was hoping to see a little bit more out of the Suns offensively, and we'll see what we see later on in the preseason. One last shout out on the Suns front, Ryan Dunn. I thought he looked really good. He guarded LeBron a bunch, picked him up full court on a possession, and LeBron ended up making like a little back cut off of a horn set where he ended up getting a layup. But he defended LeBron well in a post up and forced him into a bad miss, like a little right shoulder fadeaway where he forced him into a bad miss. He'd knocked down a corner three playing with the main guys. He's just like, he's functional size and athleticism. Like he's a big basketball player that can do a lot of things. And that's something that this team desperately needs. And so I thought that was an encouraging takeaway from last night. The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb, we don't care how they score touchdowns, we want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Super Bowl odds so far at this point in the season, the Chiefs at +500. Also, the Baltimore Ravens up to plus 750 as the second favorite to win the Super Bowl at this point. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's move on to Knicks-Hornets. So the Knicks' new starting lineup. They go with Josh Hart, as most folks predicted. They were a little clunky on both ends of the floor, which was to be expected. A lot of new players and new style on offense. So like that, it's going to be clunky. You're taking spacing big when you never had a spacing big. There's a play that I'll show you guys in the film session where Karl-Anthony Towns popped and like Jalen Brunson like didn't even realize he was out there and then eventually hit him and KAT got a decent look from three. But it's like Brunson's going to have to reconfigure the way he perceives his kick-out reads because now his kick-out reads are going to look different. There are going to be spot-up reads where like maybe an opportunity for a spot-up wasn't a great opportunity with a lesser player, but now that's Mikal Bridges, maybe you throw that pass because Mikal can beat a closeout and he's a really high-level closeout attacking scorer. That was what he used to do in Phoenix all those years ago, right? So like there's a lot of like learning on Brunson's part. There's a lot of learning on the other guy's part. Like it's new, it's different. There's going to be some clunkiness. On defense, what I thought was fascinating was the Knicks were not switching a lot of the action with their wings. Like you would assume with a Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, KAT lineup, you would imagine drop with KAT, hedge with Brunson, and then you're switching 2 through 4 with Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby. But they had Mikal Bridges chasing over the top to start the game, even on guard screens, even on screens where like Josh Hart was the other defender or Anunoby was the other defender. And so as a result of that, LaMelo Ball was getting downhill and starting to kind of pick them apart as a playmaker. The Hornets ran a ton of ball screens in this game and were really efficient throughout the game. And then in their traditional 1-5 ball screen, when they would bring run it with the center, obviously KAT's in a drop. So it's easier for LaMelo to get downhill, but LaMelo was then killing him with skip passes because the Knicks were having to get extra defenders down into the lane to help defend that ball screen. Right now, to be clear, some of it is Charlotte just shot the ball really well. They converted catch and shoot shots in that game at 1.41 points per shot. That's insane. They shot 45% from three. So like a good, but it was a lot of good looks too. So I want to give the Hornets some credit and point out some of the realities of some stuff that the Knicks have to clean up with the defense because again, like if you switch those 2 through 4 ball screens that involve LaMelo Ball, now he's not getting downhill. It stagnates, right? And then you're going to force him to play through the center. At that point, you can at least set up your base pick and roll coverage and see if you can rotate out of it. Now, for the record, I think that they're going to be in rotation a little bit on defense. I think that's part of this experience with the Knicks. Why? Because KAT's dropping and Brunson is hedging in most of these cases. So if Brunson's hedging and KAT's dropping, then there's just going to be opportunities when those guys are involved in action for guys to attack closeouts, right? And so from there, that's where ground coverage comes in. We talked about this Sam Vecini after the season, right? Like having big athletes that can cover lots of ground in rotation is how you counter that, right? Anunoby, big athlete, can cover ground in rotation. Mikal Bridges, big athlete, can cover ground in rotation. When Precious is out there, big athlete can cover ground in rotation. Josh Hart even is a guy that's really good at closing out on shooters. So like, I think a lot of it is just they need to get a little bit sharper with their closeouts and chasing guys off the line and rotating and helping each other. One random Hornets shout out to Trey Mann was awesome in this game. He was like rocking this like big baggy jersey and a headband, so he looked like a guard from like the early 2000s. It was like a blast from the past, but he came out and immediately looked good in ball screens. He hit Brandon Miller on a couple of skip passes, once again catching Josh Hart as being the third Knick defender who's coming down into the lane to help on ball screens because KAT's in a drop coverage, and KAT obviously can't cover as much ground. And we talk about the brackets of a drop coverage, right? Like the bracket is your back pressure and your big man. Your big man's ability to kind of bother the ball handler while also being back at the rim. That's how big his bracket is in that coverage. And then the other bracket, the ball handler or the guy guarding the ball handler, how good is he at back pressuring and getting in? Like, that's what causes the bracket to shrink around on people. And so Mikal Bridges has good length, and that is going to help that side of the bracket. But Karl-Anthony Towns is not the most vertical big man in the league. And so there's a little bit of weakness on the backside of that pick and roll coverage. That's where you supplement it by helping from the weak side. That's where the Knicks can get into rotation on some of those skip passes. But Trey Mann ended up hitting Brandon Miller on like back-to-back right wing threes on kickouts like that. He hit a couple of nasty step back threes. He just looked like a young Jamal Crawford in his prime type of vibe watching him out there. But anyway, back to the Knicks. Again, that's part of their defensive structure. I think it's going to be something that takes some time. And I think one of the things they can do to make it a little easier on themselves is be willing to switch Mikal Bridges in any ball screens that involve OG Anunoby or Josh Hart. There are ways they can counter that too, like when teams run 3-man action. So if they run stack pick and roll, or if they run double drag, which is like anything where there's like two people that are involved with the ball handler. So it's like a 3-man action. In situations like that, you can involve some switching as well to make things easier for Mikal Bridges. I think they're going to be fine in the long run. Again, it wasn't their best effort there in that first preseason game, but like we talked about with the Suns, like we talked about the Lakers against the Wolves, like there's going to be a good amount of sloppiness in the preseason. On offense, it was also a little clunky, but some exciting stuff. KAT just unlocks a bunch of elements to their offense that weren't there in years past. Like post-up cutting was a big one. There was 2 layups. I think Brunson missed one, and then OG Anunoby missed one. But it was like that classic like Spurs cut where like you throw the ball into the post to KAT, and then you cut. Let's say he's on the right block, so his left shoulder is facing towards the sideline on the catch. You cut off of his left shoulder. And then basically what KAT can do is as you cut off, he can pivot because he has the ball. He can pivot right after Brunson passes him and kind of like set a little brush screen in between the two of them as they're running past. And he hit both Brunson and OG Anunoby for easy catches right underneath the basket. They both smoked him, if I remember correctly. Like they missed them both, but like they were good opportunities. And part of the offense that they can get a little bit more out because of KAT. And the idea there is KAT is a threat to score. So like if that's not a threat to score, like let's say that's Mitchell Robinson, the big man who's guarding him is going to drop back on that cutter, right? Because he can show on the cutter, and then he doesn't have to worry about whoever that Mitchell Robinson turning around and quick shooting a little 10-footer or looking to quickly be aggressive to score. Because KAT is a scoring threat out of the elbow. The man who's guarding him is pressed up on him and is really worried about KAT turning around and shooting that patented little jab step jump shot, right? And so because he's up on him, as that guy cuts off of his shoulder, if he can get behind him and KAT can brush the defender a little bit, there are catches that you can have on the weak side or on the underneath the rim. And then if they help from the weak side, there are kickouts that you can get out of that. The pick and pop was a big one too. We saw a couple of really good looks for KAT out of it. And I don't even think they're even coming close to scratching the surface of what they can get out of the pick and pop with KAT and Jalen Brunson. Brunson, as I mentioned off the top, a little bit not used to playing with a player that is a legitimate pick and pop threat. And I think that he'll get more used to that in time, and he'll realize that there's just easy ways for him to generate like 3 to 4 easy threes for Karl-Anthony Towns every single game without having to work super hard and get into the lane and dribble 17 times and try to make some dramatic kick out pass. Like there's an easy opening there with KAT picking and popping that wasn't there in the past. And I've broken this down before on the show, but like the pick and pop is the counter to a drop coverage that makes it impossible to guard, right? Because the idea of the drop coverage, the big man has to do a very difficult job. They call it no roller behind coverage in most cases. Now, when the big comes up to the level, that's when you have to help from the weak side, right? But a traditional drop coverage, the ball handler's coming at you, the roller's coming at you, and you're kind of splitting the difference between both. But they're both coming at the rim. So if you're a good vertical athlete, you can kind of bother both and be in both places at once, right? But like if I'm in a drop coverage and the guard is coming downhill at me, but the screener doesn't roll, he just pops, I still have the responsibility of corralling the ball handler because the guard is in trail position. The guy guarding the ball is trailing. He chased over the screen and now he's behind the ball handler. So if I stay with the popping big, There will be plays this year where Jalen Brunson gets wide open, easy layups because the rim protector is too worried about KAT on the pop. And if he doesn't stay home with KAT on the pop and he sits in a drop coverage, KAT's going to be absolutely wide open. And there were some plays, by the way, with the Hornets where they were rotating from the weak side to KAT, and that's where those skip passes are open. So, like, there's just a lot of stuff they're going to be able to get open with Karl-Anthony Towns setting ball screens for Jalen Brunson. They use Jalen Brunson as a screener more because there's more off-ball talent around him. First play of the game, Jalen Brunson kind of ran down instead of like a little brush screen for OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby got wide open on the left side of the rim. LaMelo Ball, to his credit, snuffed it out at the last second and made like a kind of a crazy defensive play, got back into he's got super long arms. Got back into the play and got a little block from behind. But like, I think we're going to see a lot more of that, like off-ball action with Jalen Brunson functioning as the screener. I feel like they're barely scratching the surface of what they can do with those guys, obviously, because it's early in preseason. So I'm really excited to see what the Knicks can do offensively over the course of the next few weeks. One last Knick I wanted to shout out is Deuce McBride. He's becoming one of my favorite backup guards in the league. He's just a pain in the ass on ball defender. He had a play where he had a pick six on Vasilije Micic where he like ripped him on one side, beat him to the ball on the opposite side, went down the floor and got a dunk. He's got more offensive pop than most people realize. He can score from all three levels, has a nice little like mid-range jump shot, little short-range jump shot, can knock down the three. He had 22 points in 25 minutes last night. That's pretty high-level scoring output. I also thought Landry Shamet just looked like a professional two-guard out there, and that was something that I thought helped them on the offensive end of the floor. All right, let's move on to Warriors-Clippers. Interesting starting lineup for the Warriors. De'Anthony Melton got the start over Brandon Podziemski. I was a little surprised, but that is a defensible way to go. I mean, Melton is a rock-solid starting caliber two-way guard in this league, and he's a 6-year veteran. And so, like, I think I don't think it really matters because I think both Podziemski and De'Anthony Melton are going to be 25 plus minute a night guys. They're two of the best players on the roster, so they're both going to play a lot. They just happen to play the same position, so I think they're going to have some crossover there. And we know that Kerr loves to run 3-guard lineups, so like I think we're going to see a lot of like Steph, Melton, and Pods out there this year. But I did think it was interesting that Melton got the start after Podziemski ended up starting the majority of last year. And the reason we don't know what's going to happen in the long run, who knows? Maybe Pods is starting by the time the season starts. But it's more just kind of interesting from the standpoint of like the outlook of the franchise looking forward and like the idea that Podziemski is kind of viewed as a foundational piece in that sense. But anyway, we saw some of Melton's upside. He can really shoot the ball, and he's got real pop off the dribble. I told you guys, he can dribble better than most of those role player two guards out there. Good on-ball defender. Trayce Jackson-Davis got the start at center. Now, Wiggins didn't play, so we have no idea if he would have started over Kuminga or not. My guess is Kuminga would still start, but who knows? So we ended up getting Steph, De'Anthony Melton, Jonathan Kuminga, Draymond Green, and Trayce Jackson-Davis. Trayce Jackson-Davis with the starters was a kind of an interesting fit because he struggled a little bit with Zubac's size, which is to be expected. Zubac is huge, but there's a lot of starting centers in the Western Conference that are pretty big and strong. And so that's like a potential downside in the sense that problem will be there throughout the season. But there's a counter because Trayce is fast as shit. And like, there's two plays I'm going to show you guys, a couple of transition buckets for the Warriors in our Timpf's Tape segment where Trayce just like straight up beats the hell out of Zubac in a foot race and ends up getting dunks. So like I think he gets a pass for a dunk on one and then a dunk on another one. So like that's the thing is there's going to be a give and take. He's going to get beat to the offensive glass sometimes. There's going to be plays where guys like Zubac or Sabonis or Nurkic or Jokic or whoever it might be buries Trayce underneath the basket and they get to an easy little hook shot or something right underneath the basket. But the flip side is it's like, again, you know, I talk about styles, the expression styles make fights. It's what style wins the fight though. If you're bigger and you win being bigger, but you're smaller and you win being faster and you win being faster more than the big guy wins being bigger, then you've won the battle. And those are the types of battles that Trayce is going to have to win. And there's also like matchup flexibility. I wouldn't be surprised if Kerr was like, oh, Clippers regular season game, Zubac, let's go with Looney, you know? Now we're playing, the Brooklyn Nets and it's Nick Claxton. Okay. Now we're playing Trayce Jackson-Davis, you know, like it's going to be a lot of like matchup dependent type of stuff. I would imagine at that starting 5 spot. As a team though, they looked really good in transition. They outscored the Clippers 24-14 in transition. It was one of the big subplots of this game. Draymond still just an unbelievably disruptive defender. I was watching the game on Saturday night, and before I even made it 5 minutes into the game, I'm like, dude, Draymond is just blown up like his fourth possession of the entire game, where it's like he just snuffs stuff out and he aggressively goes at the basketball. He forces dudes into misses. He's just still one of the best defensive players in the league. And one of the advantages of putting Draymond at the 4, again, there's ups and downs to putting Draymond at the 4 versus at the 5. Like, if he's at the 5 and you play, Kuminga, Wiggins, and the 2 guards, there's just a lot of data last year that's when they were at their best, right? It's just there's more space to operate. They're better offensively, and they can still cover a lot of ground on defense, right? But as we've talked about, Draymond playing center all season is just a lot to put on his body. For the same reason we were just talking about with Trayce Jackson-Davis, there's a lot of big body centers in the league, and they can wear on the legs, wear on the body, cause injuries, wear and tear, that sort of thing, right? And so the upside, one of the upsides, the downside by playing 2 bigs is you are typically a little slower. Trayce is obviously very athletic, but spacing could be an issue. If you're going to play basketball, Trayce Jackson-Davis and Draymond Green on the floor at the same time, like obviously with Kuminga out there, that's 3 below average 3-point shooters all on the floor at the same time. So there are spacing concerns, right? One of the upsides is Draymond Green is in help. We talk a lot about that bracket, right? The ball screen bracket. Draymond is typically part of that bracket. Draymond's typically defending the ball screen. So he's the guy that's responsible for coming as far up to the level as the game plan dictates, which is usually depends on the matchup, or as far back, depending on the matchup, right? And he's reading the ball handler and the roller and making all of those types of decisions, right? And then it's usually like Wiggins or Kuminga that functions as the low man, which is the guy that decides whether or not to help on that ball screen or to stay home in the corner, depending on how far Draymond has to go up. Well, with Trayce Jackson-Davis defending ball screens, now Draymond is the low man. And now Draymond is the guy that's down in that help side position. And so he gets to be the guy that kind of decides whether or not to hop over there to help or to close out. And Draymond, great wingspan, one of the best guys at contesting 3-point shots after helping at the rim, literally in the history of the league. It's a really good spot for him to be defensively. And I do think that, again, it'll be like a sacrifice. Your offense will go down a level. Your spacing obviously is not as good, but you're bigger, you're more athletic, and you put Draymond into a defensive role as the low man where he can be devastating. And he was in that game against the Clippers on Saturday night. Kuminga was a little up and down, had some nice buckets in transition. He dunked on a baseline cut out of like your typical Warriors tic-tac-toe sort of thing. He had 7 rebounds, but he's still a little aloof when he's not directly involved in what's happening. Like off-ball defensively, he gets lost sometimes. He got back cut on a possession. I'm going to show you guys in the film session. There's on the offensive end, he still just doesn't quite look like he knows what to do in the flow of the offense. That's typical, again, for a younger player playing in a lot of ball and player movement. But once again, with Kuminga, it's just his first preseason game too, so don't want to read too much into it. Steph was 2 for 8 with 2 assists and 3 turnovers, but this is like a really tough matchup for him. The Clippers just have a ton of really good guard defenders. Chris Dunn is legitimately one of the very, very best players in the NBA at defending guards. Like, if you're listing strictly guard defenders, he's in the top 3 or 4 guys in the league. And he just did a really good job on Steph. Physical ball pressure, staying attached, attacking his dribble pocket, forced him into some sloppy handling situations, some turnovers. Like, that's just a tough matchup there. So again, like Steph is going to look better because he's not going to play against Chris Dunn every single night. And that's what I talk about with the Clippers in the preseason, in the season preview. Like, the strength of this roster is they've got a bunch of guys who can guard guards. It's like, oh, you got Chris Dunn off of you. Here's Terrence Mann. Oh, here's Derrick Jones Jr. It's just high level perimeter athlete after high level perimeter athlete. Moses Moody was the last Warrior guy I wanted to shout out. 2 steals and a block, 12 points in 13 minutes. Really impressive first preseason outing. Aggressive shooting the ball, had a nice off the dribble 3 on the right wing, hit a corner 3. Again, physical defense. I'm hoping he gets a bigger opportunity this year. He's never had a season where he's gotten over 20 minutes a year or 20 minutes a game for the entire season. I'd like to see him get that opportunity this year. We'll see if he does. On the Clippers front, you can see the formula. It's heliocentric Harden ball with role players all around him and a really good screening fulcrum in Zubac to tie it all together in their pick and roll game. James Harden, in just 17 minutes, 13 points, 8 assists, +5 on the scoreboard. That's the formula. Defend like crazy with your crazy good guard defenders and fly around on the perimeter and just be scrappy and tough and play hard. and then have James Harden and Ivica Zubac just pick them apart by running pick and roll. Zubac had 14 and 6 and 18 minutes. The two of them just are supernatural pick and roll pairing. And then again, like I said, just waves after waves after waves of good perimeter defenders coming off the bench. They started the game with Derrick Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn. Then it was Terrence Mann. Kobe Brown, I thought, had some really good on-ball possessions. All of them can switch. All of them are big and strong and can guard different types of perimeter initiators. They were able to drag the game down into the mud, and that's the formula. Defend like crazy, buys margin of error for James Harden to kind of lift you over the top offensively. And when you defend like that, you don't need James Harden to be Luka Doncic. You just need him to be Luka light and just do like a reasonable facsimile of that. And it's going to be enough offense if they can defend like that. All right, really quickly, we're not going to spend too much time on Bucks-Pistons. Giannis didn't play, and the Pistons are really bad, right? But we got to see how Dame looks, and he looks great. The entire team came out guns blazing. They basically hit every shot to start the game. Brooke and Dame in particular were red hot. They went up 20-3 in this game. But the main thing that I just wanted to shout out is Dame looks great. He was getting great separation. He hit his first 4 threes. He hit a couple of step backs where he just had a little bit more juice on the step back and lift than I was seeing last year. You got to be super excited if you're a Bucks fan by how Dame looked. Again, we'll talk a lot of Bucks this year. I didn't want to spend too much time on that particular game just because of the guys that were playing. Taurean Prince, you got to see a little bit of what he does and brings to the table. I thought Gary Trent Jr. looked fine. We're going to talk more about the Bucks in the long run, but I thought that was a really impressive first outing for Dame. All right, let us get to our film. Timpf's Tape. Second episode of the season. I saw you guys throw out some name suggestions. We're going with Timpf's Tape for right now, but that's still up for debate. So if you guys have any suggestions, drop them in there. We did shrink the little square. I had some of you guys tell me the square was too big, so we shrunk that down. We're working on the formatting still, and we're working on some of those details. This is going to be something we do every day, and I want it to be something that we just get a little bit better at each day, and hopefully by the end of the season, it looks more like a finished product. But I got 9 clips for you guys tonight. Clip number 1 and 2 are both Warriors low man possessions that led to transition runouts. I have 2 call outs from this play, so we're going to run it through twice. First play, we got a ball screen. As you can see, DeAnthony Melton's chasing. Trayce Jackson-Davis is in more or less a drop coverage, but Zubac is on the roll here. And Trayce is a little out of position, so James Harden makes the pocket pass. But look where Steph is. Steph's job here is to decide whether or not to help or to stay home in the corner. Steph times it perfectly, jumps the passing lane, gets in there, takes it away from Zubac. Those are those low man defensive plays that are so important. Then we get the Warriors out in transition, where once again, they dominated this game 24-14 in transition points. Trayce Jackson-Davis drops it off for Kuminga for a dunk. Now, you guys remember the talking point I had earlier in the game about styles making fights and about how you just have to win with your particular style? Zubac, as we talked about, a little big for Trayce Jackson-Davis. What is Trayce Jackson-Davis's advantage? Speed. Let's watch what happens here. Pass. At the point of the turnover, Zubac is actually closer to the basket than Trayce Jackson-Davis. They're both more or less even with each other. I'm going to run this in full speed. Watch how much faster Trayce Jackson-Davis is than Zubac getting down the floor. Look at this. Zubac is not even in the frame. And Trayce looks like a wing making a play in transition. That's his advantage. If he ends up starting a lot this year, that's how he can beat out these bigger, slower bigs around the NBA. Let's get to clip number 2. This time, Draymond Green, once again, as the help defender. Trayce Jackson-Davis is the guy that is guarding the ball screen. This allows Draymond Green to function as the low man. As we can see in this, we can see how this play is developing, right? So, and by the way, Synergy splits play clips into different play types. I wanted to include the transition segment. That's why the beginning of these plays got cut off. If I show the beginning of this plays, then I missed on the transition, and the transition is kind of part of the point here. So, as James Harden is coming off, Trayce Jackson-Davis is in a high drop, right? This is, I believe, that's DeAnthony Melton chasing over the top. Steph is tagging the roller real quick. So, Zubac is getting behind Trayce Jackson-Davis. Steph is doing something that he can do on this play to make life a little easier. Let's just bump Zubac with that shoulder there, right? Then Steph gets back out to the corner. Now Draymond is splitting the difference. He's hanging tight. He's putting himself in a position where he feels comfortable. If James Harden has two reads available, James can throw this pass on the bounce to Zubac, or he can throw the skip to Kobe Brown here in the left corner, right? Draymond has to make a read. He's playing the difference where he feels like if James makes this pass, he can close out, but he can also get to Zoo. Watch the pass. Watch how Draymond sits, waits, boom, explodes, gets there. And this is where Draymond's long arms are a huge advantage. Watch that. That's in slow motion. I'm going to show this in fast motion. Watch how quickly Draymond goes from standing still to deflecting this pass. Crazy defensive play. And once again, like blows it up. There's two open guys there. Draymond is splitting the difference between the two. Turns out neither of them are open. Once again, we have Trayce Jackson-Davis sprinting up the floor way ahead of Zubac. And he's going to get a lob dunk. Running the floor. That's the best way for Trayce Jackson-Davis to show his value at the center position. All right. This is a possession where the Clippers end up getting a layup for Terrence Mann out of the left corner. The reason why I put this play in here is I always talk about the importance of off-ball player movement. So off-ball player movement is the simplest way I can put it is like, here we're getting a ball screen, right? We're getting Chicago action. So the Clippers are running Chicago action on the strong side. All that is James Harden pinning down for Norman Powell. It's going to come off of a handoff from Zubac, right? These are your weak side spacers. So there's two versions of this play, right? There's the version of it where they just stand. They stand still. Kuminga can kind of sit here. Let's say Powell comes off. Kuminga can dig down, but if Powell makes the kick out pass, Kuminga can easily close out because it's such a short distance. It's much easier help side defense if these guys just stand still. But instead, as Norman Powell comes off of this dribble handoff, Kobe Brown goes, hey, vacant corner. As they're running this action, James could theoretically stay up at the wing. I'm just going to cut through. Just not because I think I'm going to get a layup, but just because I'm going to do something other than stand still. Kobe Brown cuts through. Watch what happens. Now let's slow it down and talk about what specifically happened. On the cut, Jonathan Kuminga is so keyed in on the Chicago action. Look at him. He's keyed in on the Chicago action. Kobe back cuts him, beats him from behind there. This forces Steph to chase the cutter. So now since Steph chases the cutter, sorry guys. Since Steph has chased the cutter, Kuminga is now guarding Terrence Mann. And because Kuminga is now guarding Terrence Mann, when Kobe was here, that's a closeout Kuminga can make. But with Terrence Mann being all the way over here, that's a much tougher closeout. Now we get the pass. Little jab step. Kuminga's way on the high side because he closed down from the elbow. Terrence Mann is able to get downhill. And he's got too much of a head of steam. Goes up and under on Trayce Jackson-Davis for a nice finish. So again, you get a high quality closeout opportunity just by virtue of cutting. Now, the counterpoint would be, okay, Jason, but Jonathan Kuminga just got back cut. That's all that really happened there, right? Yeah, you're right. And guess what? Any elite defense that is locked in, they're not going to make many mistakes, and it's going to be difficult for you to find openings. The point is, the more action you run on the ball, the more off-ball player movement you have, the more off-ball screening you have. All of those things force defenders to make decisions. And if you make a defense make 2 or 3 times as many decisions on a possession, there's just more chances that they make a mistake. For instance, if Kobe Brown just stands still there on this switch, they switch this, right? Steph stays in the corner. If Kobe Brown just stands there, Kuminga does not have to make a decision having to do with Kobe Brown. He's keyed in on the ball handler. He knows where he is. If the kick out passes there, he closes out. Kobe Brown cutting forces the Warriors to make a decision. Kuminga makes a mistake that generates the opening. Think of it like a blender. The more of a blender you put their defense in, the more chance that it breaks apart. But if you attack it in a very rudimentary and basic way, there's less opportunity for that defense to break apart. That's why off-ball player movement is so important. That's why I wanted to include that play. Simple, easy basketball. All right. This next one is a Karl-Anthony Towns pick and pop. So, one of the things I want you to keep an eye on here, I talked about this. You could tell Brunson's just not used to having this as an option. This is an easy read, right? Okay, so we're in our drop coverage, right? Taj Gibson's in the drop coverage. Brandon Miller's chasing over the top. As Brandon Miller's chasing, Taj is still staying in the drop. KAT is staying around the three-point line, right? Now, a little bit of spacing detail. Josh Hart needs to be a little bit further over here. That makes it so that Trey Mann is a little bit further over here. But still, the play develops. Josh sees it at the last second, kind of cuts out of the way. Look at Brunson, though. Brunson's not even looking at the fact that KAT's wide open. And it's because he's not used to it. Look at Brunson. He's looking down. He's looking this way. Hasn't even located KAT yet. He's wide open. Does eventually notice it and go, oh shit, he's right there. Passes him the ball and he hits it. This is one of those things where in time, Brunson will realize, like, as one of his passing reads, look back. Because if KAT's open, one of the best shots the Knicks can generate this year is an open catch and shoot three for Karl-Anthony Towns. And so there's no need to kind of overcomplicate things if that's open. And so again, that was an example, a just simple example of like new players, new fit, gonna take some time. Brunson's playing with the stretch five. He ran a ball screen. It took him a while to even look behind him to see if the stretch big was open. This is a Hornets play that I wanted to show you guys simply just because it's a very, very good example of a well-executed double drag. So double drag ball screen, we talk about stack ball screens. These are like different ball screens that involve three players, right? Stack ball screens where we have the shooter underneath and he's going to back screen for the screener, right? A double drag, all that is a staggered ball screen where one player rolls and one player pops. So Vasilije Micic is the ball handler. First screener pops, second screener rolls, right? So that's how the play is developed, right? But as you can see, let's go back to the defensive element. Shamet's chasing, but because of that second screen, Shamet's in trail position. This forces, I think that's Jericho Sims, is in the drop coverage. Jericho Sims is now defending the ball, and Shamet is chasing. So now we've made Precious Achiuwa make a decision, right? Because these guys, Shamet and Sims, are both on the ball. We have Taj rolling, unguarded, and we have the popping shooter above the break, right? Precious has to make a decision. His decision he makes is to stay home. See, Precious stays home with the shooter. This makes it so that Taj is wide open. And Taj ends up getting a dunk. One last little detail here. Notice Vasilije Micic. Watch how he fakes the floater before he throws the pass, which forces Jericho Sims to jump. Watch as he's getting downhill. He's going to go up like he's shooting a floater. Watch. You look right there. You're thinking floater right there. That looks like a floater. That forces Jericho Sims to jump. Boom. Now that roll is open. Because if he doesn't fake the shot, Jericho Sims is in that no roller behind coverage we talked about earlier, where now Jericho Sims can stunt, but recover and get back to Taj. This is why it's so important for the ball handler to engage the screen defender. He's got to get him to commit to him offensively. Otherwise, this guy won't be open. But again, as I talked about earlier, this is an on-ball example of that same concept we were talking about with the Clippers. The more on-ball action you run, meaning complicated action, multiple players instead of just a simple ball screen, the more opportunity you give the defense to make a mistake. And if the defense makes a mistake, that's where you generate the opening, right? Like that's why I'm such a big believer in running action. That's why I'm such a believer in off-ball player movement. It's about forcing the defense to execute. And the more times you force the defense to execute, the more times they're going to make mistakes. Moving on to the Lakers. Here is just a classic LeBron James, Anthony Davis pick and pop. This is a great example of that concept I was talking about earlier involving drop coverages and how hard they are to guard against pick and pop. So again, KD's on the ball, right? KD's on the ball. We have Tyus Jones kind of digging down to the nail. But as LeBron comes off the ball screen, KD's chasing, Plumlee's dropping. AD pops, he's wide open. LeBron hits him and he knocks down the three. And again, too, that's a simple example too. Last year, AD would have popped to this spot. AD would have popped more or less into this kind of like elbow area where he would have made probably 40-45% of them, right? He's not going to shoot 40-45% out here, but he's going to get an extra point every time he makes one, which is going to help with the math. Here's a really sharp Laker defensive possession that I wanted to shout out, and one specifically that shows some of the quality help side defense from LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So this is going to start with an action that gets defended by AD and Austin Reeves. So it starts with Beal is on Hachimura, right? Tyus Jones is being guarded by Austin Reeves. Beal is going to slip because on this pick, they're switching. The Lakers are switching 1 through 4. This is something they've been talking about a lot in training camp. But one of the ways you can beat switching is understand angles, right? So all I have to do is touch Austin. That's going to trigger the switch. But when I trigger the switch, Austin's now on my top side. Rui is guarding the ball handler. So Beal slips behind Austin, right? So they switched, but because Austin's stuck on the top side, Beal makes the right decision. He cuts, right? So that's how the Lakers got compromised initially. So now it's about helping each other in rotation, right? So AD's got to help, right? AD steps over and helps Beal. As AD helps Beal, you're going to watch Austin immediately go, oh shit, AD's got Beal. I need to recover to Plumlee. Austin gets to Plumlee. Look at him. He's running to Plumlee, making sure that drop-off pass isn't open. Beal would have thrown it if Austin had given up on the play or chased Brad. He would have thrown a little bounce pass to Plumlee. Plumlee's getting a dunk. Austin takes away the drop-off pass to Plumlee. Beal drives through. As Beal drives through, they switch again. Austin goes, okay, I got Brad now. Look at you can see AD identify it. He's like, okay, I'm on Beal. I'm on Beal. I'm on Beal. Okay, Austin's got him now. Watch him jerk back. Now he's coming back this way. Okay, now I'm back on Plumlee. Now, because if they don't communicate that well and they both stay on Beal, then Beal can drop it off to Plumlee here for a dunk because they recover. Now we're back in a one-on-one situation. Now it's Beal on an island against Austin Reeves. They end up kicking out, but they go right back down. So let me fast forward a little bit. There's our swing. Now we're one-on-one, Austin and Beal. Okay, 7 on the shot clock. Let's see how our help side defense pans out. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Okay, so here we are posting up, right? Plumlee's making himself available at the elbow. KD's on the weak side. LeBron and AD are both in like help side position where they can stay home in case these kick out passes come, but they can help if they need to, right? So let's see. AD's making a decision. Austin's got this. He's fine. I don't need to help. Spin. But then he sees Austin gets compromised by the spin move right here. Uh-oh. Beal's going to go past him on the baseline. Now AD knows I've got to help. So AD comes over. Look at LeBron. LeBron hasn't done anything yet. But as soon as AD got his uh-oh moment with Austin, now LeBron's about to get his uh-oh moment with AD where he goes, oh shit, AD's coming over to help. AD is now committed to help. So now LeBron has to engage to make that next rotation. LeBron immediately engages, snaps over, beats Plumlee to the spot, and blocks him at the rim. Really, really good defense and communication from Austin, LeBron, and AD on that possession. All right, 2 more. This is an example of the Suns generating 3-point shots instead of mid-range pull-up shots. So as you can see here, Devin Booker gets slip. Same sort of action we just talked about with Brad and Devin. Devin screens the bottom side of Rui. Because he's on the bottom side of Rui, when the switch triggers, look at Austin. Austin comes running out to guard KD. And now Hachimura is switching. Booker slips it, gets into this part of the floor, right? This is a shot we know Devin Booker can make and can make at a very, very high percentage. But instead, he knows that Dalton Knecht came over as the low man to help. Let's turn it into a wide open catch and shoot 3 for a guy who shot over 40% from 3 last year. Boom. That's the type of like order of operations where it's like, yeah, if it's late in the shot clock and we need to take a pull up 2, or if they're staying home off the ball and we're in a 2-on-2 ball screen and this is the only shot we can get, okay, that's fine. But like whenever you can generate catch and shoot 3s for good shooters or shot attempts at the rim They are so far and away more efficient than any other shot in basketball. You have to hunt those whenever you can. This was the last one I threw in here. I'm going to include a lot of this kind of junk in our film sessions just because I think it's fun. This is not any sort of dramatic schematic thing. I just think it's smart basketball players making a smart play. LeBron and AD are going to generate a dunk out of a jump ball here, middle of the game, right? So it's three minutes left in the second quarter. But look at how the play is set up. If you look at the Suns, Josh Okogie, one of the better athletes on the team, tied up with Max Christie on this side of the ball, right? We have the guy making the jump. Tallest player on the floor is Bol Bol. Bol Bol is assigned to D'Angelo Russell at this point in time in the jump ball. I want you to watch AD sprint as soon as he catches, because AD knows if I can just beat Bol Bol down the floor, I'm getting a dunk. Because I think this is Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones ain't going to stop me. Grayson Allen ain't going to stop me. The only guy that can stop me at the rim maybe is Bol Bol. If I outrun him and catch him slipping, I'm going to get a dunk. LeBron and AD have clearly discussed this before the play, because watch how quickly AD takes off. Sprint. Ball is up. See how quickly that was? See how quick that happened? LeBron throws the pass after one dribble. Those are little things where it's just like, oh, we identified that they're lined up funky on the jump ball and they don't have anybody back here to take care of the rim. Like if Bol Bol is back here instead, then that's not open. It's probably just something LeBron and AD discuss. Hey, whenever they have their big man away from like kind of that free safety spot in the jump ball, let's just have you sprint quick. Tap, sprint, one dribble, lob, dunk. Easy work for LeBron and AD. All right, guys, that's all I have for today for our first old-fashioned Hoops Tonight episode of the season. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with another season preview. We have, I think, 5 more season previews to do before the start of the year as well. Well, we will get to all of them before the October 22nd, which I think is the start of the season. But we'll also react to at least 1 or 2 preseason games tomorrow as well. And then we'll do another episode of Timpf's tape at the tail end. Again, as always, I appreciate you guys for supporting the show, and I'll see you tomorrow.